Welcome to the Lady Landlords podcast, where we empower women to gain financial independence through real estate investing. I'm your host, Becky Nova, founder of Lady Landlords. If you're ready to buy, manage, and grow your real estate portfolio, then let's get started. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. Today, we are interviewing one of our members. We have a member spotlight that we're bringing to you to really share just such an inspiring story on how to get started in real estate investing. So Patty will be joining me today, all to share about how she got her first rental property. So Patty, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Well, I've been emailing you for like months trying to get you on here. Because you have done so much work, even leading up to getting that first property, that I even thought that it was just so cool to share all of the education, everything that you were doing along the way, that even though you technically didn't have like keys in hand, that you were doing all the right steps. And I really felt that that deserved to be applauded. But now that you got the first property, we even have more to talk about today.
Yeah, I think it's, I had to give myself a lot of patience and reassure myself that like, even though I don't have the first property yet, like just all the things you're doing will build up to that. That is like, it'll come, but there's a lot of steps and learning before you get there.
Plus also, when you think about it, when we say we're going to buy a rental property, there are things in that situation that we can control, right? Getting the education we need, getting pre-approved, looking at houses. But having the market yield us the right property is something that's not in our control.
Yeah, I mean, I put in 3 offers. So my third one was on 3 different properties. So I did one, and as a new person, I was like, oh, I'm going to get it. Well, that doesn't work like that.
Right. And listen, but like that's why when we set like our goals, we need to be really careful, because just to say like, hey, I'm going to buy a property at the end of, by the end of the year. Well, that's very passive language. That's really almost hoping something that's going to happen that's not necessarily always in our control, but saying, hey, I'm going to get pre-approved. Hey, I'm going to look at properties. Hey, I'm going to reach out to a realtor. Those are all things that we should really be applauded for. And those are the goals that we should be setting, because that's all in that active voice. And we can either say, yes, I did it, or no, I didn't do it. So I appreciate all of the steps that you took to get yourself there. So I would love if you would just share a little bit about who you are, so we can kind of talk about how real estate even related into your own lifestyle.
Sure. So I am 48. I am a New York City public school teacher. I went through a divorce in 2015 and did not have a lot of that, like financially kind of wiped me out. So teachers don't make lots of money. So I had been like saving a lot, and thinking about a lot of my extra income comes from tutoring, which could be like varies. And so I was thinking about like, where could I get extra income that's more stable?
Right.
So
I love that you kind of took into that. You literally looked at the skills you had being a teacher and said, what other gigs can I kind of pick up to be able to bring in some extra income? And you really found tutoring. But it seemed like that gig economy kind of falls under trading time for money, right?
Oh, yep. I was just going to say that, right? Like real estate, I'll get the rent every month, and then I can spend time doing other things. Whereas, yeah, it's absolutely time for money.
And tutoring too is pretty time intensive.
So, because you spend an hour with the kids, but you maybe spend an hour preparing for that.
Correct. Or then what do you have to correct after, or what, so it's more than just cool, I'm getting paid for an hour to tutor somebody, but it's really probably 2 to 3 hours that really goes into that fee.
Communicating with the parents, scheduling, all that. Yeah.
Right.
And then it disappears a lot in the summer. So then it's
Also
really,
true.
yes. And during vacation. So it's kind of like feast or famine sort of.
Right. Because now you're already working full time, and now in addition, taking on these tutoring gigs. But now in the summer, when you have more free time because school's out, nobody wants to be tutored in the middle of July and August.
No. No,
right? Or someone's gonna be really unhappy with their parents in that situation.
Mhm.
So,
Yes, yes.
so when you then decided, okay, well, tutoring, great. We can make good money doing that. It's nice to bring in that extra income to really help with savings and things. What, and then you said, okay, but I'm trading time for money. There's got to be a better way. What
Mhm.
kind of research did you do into what your options would be? And how did you end up falling on real estate investing?
Um, I I really love watching those like real estate shows on TV. And I mean, I don't have any desire to be a real estate agent, but like I kind of always liked the home shows, home like I don't, and so somehow I just kind of like started hearing about like people were renting them out or fixing and flipping. And so then I just kind of like did like internet research. I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then I just kind of like, I think through just like researching like what kind of how much money you could make with real estate investing. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. But then I
Right.
was like, oh gosh, but I live in New York. I can't afford anything here.
Right. Then all of a sudden that kind of throws a little bit of a wrench in your plans. Let me ask you a question though.
Mhm.
As you were saying like, okay, great, like housing, rentals, homes, that's something that really kind of interests me. You said you
Mhm.
kind of started to dig into a little of the education there to learn kind of more what it would take to invest. Can you share like some resources or like where did you kind of go for that?
I think I listened to some of the bigger pockets podcasts, especially
Mhm.
like they have the real estate rookie one.
Right. Which I
Yeah.
was on episode
Oh,
number
really?
69.
Yeah. All
Yep.
right.
I
Good
was
one.
on that episode. So if anybody has not listened to my episode on real estate rookie, go back and take a listen to that. Episode 69, you can hear all about me. So, um, but that was, but you already found Lady Landlords by that time. You
Yeah,
already
I
a
think
part of a
I
group.
found Lady Landlords pretty early on. Because I was like, oh, this is interesting. Yeah, ladies and like what a nice community. Um, and then I think I didn't like I did some research on my own, but I think
Mhm.
really most of the information I got was from taking the classes with you.
Right. Because then so you kind of did your background homework. Sounded
Mhm.
like then you said, okay, this is a path that I kind of want to go down. But it sounds like then you said, I need a little more information before I jump into this. Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because I was like, I don't like, I would see these like, on HGTV, people would like fix and flip or fix and rent out. And I was like, okay, that seems like something I could be able to do. How do I get to that? So
Right.
then I started listening to Bigger Pockets. I also would like watch little videos on YouTube. And there's a wide variety of people on YouTube.
Yes, there are.
Yeah, so I think you on YouTube take everything with a grain of salt.
Correct.
Um,
And that's kind of when there's always kind of that debate of like paying somebody for a course for help versus kind of just watching YouTube videos and kind of piecing it
Mhm.
together. And you're kind of right. Watching YouTube videos, you don't know what's actually going on behind the scenes with that person, right? And then you still are kind of left to putting all those pieces together and hoping that you kind of get it right just because you're just watching a video. You're not actually interacting with anybody, right?
Yeah, and I can remember like watching some videos and it just seemed like not very much information. It was just kind of a lot of like pie in the sky. You can make this much money sort of things, but take my class for or join and have this membership for like $5,000. And I
Right.
was like, wait, okay, no, that was too much. Like that
Right.
seemed like way too much of a financial um, you know,
Well, that's like part of
cost.
that's a huge amount of like your down payment kind of going to
Yeah.
that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So what made you then say, hey, the Lady Landlord's beginners course would be a good fit for you?
Um, I think because it was such a contrast between the other real estate things I was seeing, like I would put, type in like real estate or something on Facebook and see like different groups and they just seemed so like very, I guess, just like pie in the sky and not like nuts and bolts, like I'm going to teach you exactly X, Y, Z. So I think your course seemed very like informational, laid out, like structured. It was financially reasonable for me. I was like, oh, this looks great. It's not like, it also didn't come with like, you have to have this, expensive membership and all these other things. Like it was just the class. I was like, this is great. It also having the meeting once a week to talk, like, over Zoom. It wasn't just I'm doing it by myself.
Right.
Just watching videos. Because I think having you to talk, to ask questions to, and then the other people in the class to feel like you're not alone.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, because that was really kind of how I really designed it. So it's actually really nice feedback for me to kind of hear that did help you and kind of hit the mark that I was trying to make. I was in the exact same position as you when I was first starting out. And same thing, I was listening to Bigger Pockets podcast about how this person bought 47 houses in 3 hours and this other person became a millionaire overnight. And I was like, okay, cool. But like, how do I do those things? What steps am I supposed to take? Like, great that it worked for this person and that's what they were able to do, but how does that apply to me? What do I actually do in that situation? So also being a fellow New Yorker over here, we're very direct and kind of to the point. So to me, I was like, I really just want to create something that gives people steps. 1, 2, 3, this is what you have to do. Right. Then going to the second part that you said, I can't tell you how many times I've signed up for like a webinar or got like or a course or something like that. And they just like sent me videos. And I was like, oh, I have to watch these on my own. No, if you tell me I have to be there Monday, 7 p.m., that's it. I'm going to show up for that because I don't want to miss out. But otherwise, I'll watch the video next week. I have a full, totally transparency here. I have an entire folder in my email inbox that is called other people's content to watch. And it's just, know how many times I've opened it?
Yeah.
0. Never.
I have
it's
that
always, oh, I'll do that later.
Yeah. Right. Like you'll sign up for a webinar, you can't go, they send you the recording. I have those for both real estate and for teaching. So I have.
So you do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause if it's not like at the time, then I'm like, oh, I'll watch it whenever. And then I, a lot of times never end up watching it. Or you have a question and then what do you do?
Correct. Now you have that video, but then like you're saying, then that tends to either be a higher priced membership, you're locked in for, and you're kind of like, no, I just want the answers. I just needed something a little bit clarified and I don't have a person to really kind of go to. So that makes me really happy. That was actually the things that you named that you liked about the Beginner's Guide to Investing were all the things that I was trying to fix from my own issues. So I'm really happy that that landed well. So
yeah, definitely.
Do you remember any particular like highlight from the course that you were like, oh, I'm so happy to now know that I can now apply that?
I mean, I think one thing that I think 2 things. One, all the analyzing a deal and like, because in real estate, people, throw out numbers and acronyms, and I'm like, I don't have any idea what we're talking about. But I think it was maybe like the 3rd or 4th class where you broke down, like gave us a formula about how to figure those numbers out. When I was looking for my first property, I had like my notebook open and I would like look back and like figure it out using that.
Right. I've actually heard that from other women that they go back. It's actually the module 3 is it's just all how to step by step how to analyze a deal. And I've had a lot of people tell me, because you get lifetime access to the course. So I have people that actually tell me that they go back and rewatch it every time they go to buy a property and like just pause, play and pause as they kind of go through the steps themselves. So I'm really happy you're able to do that. So let's talk about this first property. You originally were going to be buying, you originally had a plan of what you were going to do for buying a property. And then that plan kind of shifted a little bit because I kind of know the backstory to this. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you were planning on doing and then the roadblocks that you kind of came across with that plan?
So my original plan, I met someone through Lady Landlords who had bought a property, or had bought a few properties up in Rochester, New York.
Mhm.
So I actually went up there and went around with an agent and looked at different properties. And that was this past winter, like December
I
2021.
remember that because I was like, who goes to Rochester in the winter?
Yeah.
For anybody that's not familiar with New York and where Rochester is, it's basically the idea of going like to the Arctic Circle. So,
Yeah. And randomly there was a windstorm and blew the power out in the hotel the last night I was there.
oh, that's an
So I
extra
slept in
special
the
treat.
dark and the cold in Rochester in December.
Oh my God, you're lucky you didn't freeze to death.
Yeah. Yeah. So we went around and looked at some properties, and I found like one that I liked and was interested in, but the value of it, it was listed for 120, and the agent was saying, well, you probably should, put in an offer for above that, but the rent wasn't going to cover, as I wasn't going to make a lot of profit with the rent.
Right. It didn't fit what you considered a good deal.
Yeah. And then I met with someone else who was a property manager in Rochester, and he was saying that Rochester doesn't seem like a profitable market, that there are not a lot of people moving in, that there are some like poorly maintained neighborhoods, and rent wasn't very high. So I was like, oh boy, this does not sound great. It doesn't sound great. So then I came home and I was like, okay, this doesn't sound promising. The market doesn't sound like it's expanding. It doesn't sound, the property manager also said the job market there wasn't expanding.
Gotcha. Quick question before you kind of move to the next step. I just think it was still fantastic that you went there, that you flew up there, that you stayed in a hotel, that you booked time with the realtor to go look at properties because that was your plan. And then you really kind of went through all that steps. What do you feel like was the most helpful by actually going and kind of getting on the ground there and kind of doing that property tour? What do you feel like was kind of the highlight of that trip and how that really helped you?
I think, so the first property that we went to see was not in a great neighborhood. So I
Okay.
think going there and seeing how not great and not well maintained the properties were there really helped, because the second property we saw was in a better neighborhood. The like little downtown area is charming, but I think it gave me a real sense that like there are a number of neighborhoods that are not well maintained there.
Gotcha.
And it's
Okay.
not like doesn't seem like a thriving economy.
Right. So for you, it was really helpful to kind of just go there, see what it was like. It became much more tangible, much more real, rather than just kind of seeing pictures of a house, but that doesn't really tell you what the neighborhood's like.
And I did learn a lot from the realtor, because we were talking about, we went through and he pointed at, I told him I was a first time home buyer. And so he was pointing out like things to look for, like
good.
things that I had never thought about, like, the water heater, or like that you should have the like cinder block sort of glass, that's not what it's called, but like the glass block windows in the basement, like things like that I was like, oh, okay. It was good to like hear things to look for that I didn't know.
It was kind of like on-hands training, really.
Yeah.
So I love that. So, okay. So now you came back from Rochester and you're like, all right, we ain't going with Rochester. What do you do next?
Yeah. So then I kind of like put a pause on that and was like, I had a lot of tutoring jobs at the moment. So I thought, okay, I will tutor as much as I can for like January through the spring. And so I just tutored like crazy and just put all the money aside. And then I emailed you and said, do you know anyone who has properties like in the like 120 budget?
Right.
And so then you connected me with Devin in North Carolina. She
Mhm.
didn't have any, but then she gave me the connection of
Ah,
Heidi and Calamusa, who's in Birmingham, Alabama.
I love that. I love
Yeah,
how when you reached out, I remember that when you were like, "Hey, I need help. Where can I kind of go?"
yeah,
And my favorite thing is really being a connector. So I loved that I was just like, actually, I do know somebody. And then
yeah.
I put you in touch with that person. And sometimes that direct person cannot help you. But what's
Mhm.
great is then you said, okay, we might not be a good fit, but now do you know anybody that would be a right fit? So sometimes it does take some calls to kind of go through that path,
Yeah,
but you got to the person that you needed.
yeah, and she is great. Like the agent I found in Birmingham is great.
Good.
We actually have a lot in common. I do powerlifting. She does bodybuilding, which is random that we both
Correct.
do that. Her husband is a contractor, and so they do a lot of their own fix and flips. So they'll actually do the work, and then so he knows a lot of people in the construction industry in Birmingham, and
Right.
then he's a real estate agent.
Now, how did you settle in Birmingham?
So that's where Heidi was, who I got connected
Right.
with. And so I looked um at the houses and I was like, okay, I could afford this and the cost of the rent covers more than the mortgage. Like with, home and owner's insurance and taxes.
Right. Which is
Um,
interesting because when you now found that area where you were like, great, I have good people in place and I have the price point that I'm looking for and the returns that I'm looking for, it kind of doesn't matter if you were buying in Birmingham or if you were buying in Jacksonville or you were
mhm.
buying in Charlotte. That was just the place that worked for you. So if you're buying long distance, that part kind of became less important, right?
Yeah. And that I think also that it wasn't just like a one-off. It wasn't just like that house was in my budget. It was like there's a whole market of homes in this budget and so I mean, I would like to buy other properties there. So it's not just like I got this magical deal, that it's the whole
Right.
market is about, I could afford things in that market. Yeah.
Which is also really great because when you already built a team, right? You already have the realtor,
Mhm.
you already have contacts down there. For
Yeah.
now, the next property, it makes sense to say, let me stay in a place that works rather
Mhm.
than going and taking the chance to find now another great realtor or another great contractor, right? The fact that you already have that team, like if
Mhm.
it still works for your budget and still gives you the returns you're looking for, I always recommend for people to kind of stay in that same area because you're really making your own life easier.
Yeah. And so I found the place that I bought had tenants in place. Um,
Mhm.
and I asked my realtor um, what the reputation of the property managers that had that property. And she said their reputation was okay. So I
Okay.
did some research into other property management and called someone else. And he was great. And so now I put a different property manager in place.
Gotcha.
And it's a like family owned company, and his name, the guy who goes out and does all the property managing, his name is Larry, and he's super into it. And he's like, well, also if you want to buy other properties, just give me the address and I'll go drive by it and I'll tell you about it. It's like, oh,
That's
okay, great.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Actually, I have another lady landlord that needs a new property manager in Birmingham. So
Oh,
after this call, I'm going to ask you for that contact and
yeah.
I'm going to share Larry with her.
Oh yeah, Larry's
So
great.
perfect. See, I love how this works. So for this one though, did you go down to Birmingham to go look at the area again?
So I didn't. I
You
was
didn't.
no, I did not. I did not, because I was actually started making offers, and it was June, it was the end of school. I had a big powerlifting meet in Las Vegas. So
That's so cool. No one on this podcast has ever said, well, I couldn't go look at a house because I had to go to a powerlifting conference. I love it.
yeah.
Um,
So I was like, in the Uber, like texting about making offers on my way to like go do powerlifting.
yeah.
But I think Heidi, I didn't feel like I needed to go. She seemed like she was so responsive, and you know, I would look at properties, I would send her some properties and say, what do you think about this? And I would say, you know, I don't think the numbers work. And she's like, yeah, I agree. I don't think so either. So she gave me her honest opinion. So I felt like
Great.
I was in good hands with that. And I researched neighborhoods in Birmingham, and there are some that are pretty unsafe that you should not buy in.
Yeah. So you were able to really say, like, these are the places I want to avoid. These are the places I want to look.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And was that information that you were able to really kind of find from the realtor you were working with, or was that more just kind of your own online research?
It started online, and then I asked her, like, what are some specific areas to stay away from? And she just gave me 3 neighborhoods that are the most unsafe. Like,
perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's really interesting that the first time you flew and really walked through these properties and found that such a valuable experience, and then the second time you were able to say, nah, I don't need to, I'm just happy to kind of go. What do you think made kind of that difference for you? Was it just the people you were working with, or was there something else that made you feel more confident buying sight unseen?
Yeah. I think having done it once, I was like, okay, I sort of know, I feel like I've kind of done it, and it's not completely new. I also felt like Birmingham is so far away that that's a long trip. And honestly, there were a lot of people like that, like I follow on Instagram or on, you know, various like on Facebook, who are talking about buying properties out of state.
Right.
And was like, okay, I mean, as long as, like, some of the listings don't have a lot of photographs, like I'm not going to buy one of those. Like, I want to like see all the photographs. And it was through a real estate agent, you know, and so she could connect with the other agent. So I felt like I trusted their information.
Now, did you have the realtor go out and either like do a walkthrough video with you over like FaceTime, or send any other pictures to you? Or were you really happy with what was kind of sent to you in that original listing?
I was fine, because there are people, there are 2 people that live there, so I didn't want to bother them. So I was fine with the information that they had sent me.
That's
I did
great.
have it. Yeah, I mean, I did, before closing, I did have it appraised. I mean, the
inspection.
Yes, I had it inspected, and then I had the sewer inspected, and
great.
Yeah.
So what other steps did you need to take buying long distance? Did you use an attorney down there? How did you find your lender? Were there other kind of people that you were calling around Birmingham trying to find?
Yeah, so I started with my real estate agent, and I asked her for some recommendations. And she gave me the name of, I think because she's a real estate investor in Birmingham also. So she also does the buying process. So she connected me with a mortgage broker, and she was great. And so I just used her. She seemed, you know, she had a few things to offer me. She was easy to communicate with, super professional, very fast turnaround time. And then she gave me a connection for insurance, and my realtor gave me a connection for someone else. So I talked to both of those people and compared and picked one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it was just all through connections.
Which, once again, and we talk about this in the beginner's course as well, like using those referrals, right? When you find one person you like, doesn't mean you have to work with everybody that they refer you to,
Right.
but it's clearly the path of least resistance and the best place to start.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you then bought that property, you said that there were already tenants in place. Did you, were there questions that you asked about the tenants, or was there anything that you kind of learned about them that affected your decision making in purchasing that property?
So they wouldn't allow us to like find out their names or really any information about them until we close.
Okay.
But Larry went over and introduced himself to them and like walked around and inspected the property, inspected the outside, and gave me a full report on them. And, you know, he said that they were great. It's there's not a couple, but it's a brother and sister in their mid-70s
Okay.
that live in the property. They take care of it. I mean, I do feel a little concerned that like there were things that needed to be fixed that the other property manager hadn't fixed for them. You know, because I want to make sure that, you know, they're in their 70s. They should be taken care of and have a non-leaky toilet.
Correct.
Yeah.
100%. So when you then bought the place and took that over, was that stuff, did you have like a punch list that you kind of gave Larry to take care of at that time?
Yeah. So the first thing was the initial inspection showed that there was like an area of sort of like wet dirt where grass wasn't growing in the backyard. And the inspector said that might be septic tank problems.
Okay.
Then it was optional to have the septic tank inspected. But I was like, okay, yes, let's do that because there might be a problem. And thank goodness I did, because before we closed, the person went out. I guess you dig up like the line and where the septic tank is. And he said it's very old and needs to be completely replaced.
Wow.
And this was before we closed. So I was like, oh gosh, how much is that going to cost?
Of course.
And, yeah. And he said $6,000.
And you're like, oh, great.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I'm like, great. And, you know, he said, do you want me to continue the inspection? I said, well, there's no point since it all needs to be replaced. So he said, fine. And he covered it back up and went on his way. And only charged me a fraction of the cost because he didn't have to do.
Oh, that was very nice. Very nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what did you do with this impending $6,000 bill?
Yeah. So then I texted my realtor and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna, we need to ask for credit or, you know, I'm not gonna purchase a property where I have to spend $6,000 the first month that I own it.
And day one, exactly.
Yeah, day one for something that's must be replaced.
Right.
So we went back to, so the owner was also an out-of-state investor.
Okay.
So he gave us the $6,000 credit.
The whole $6,000, Patty.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So
I was expecting you to be like, oh, I got a little bit, or we split it. The whole $6,000. That is amazing.
Yeah. So I got $6,000 for that. And then I got $1,000 for other things like the leaky toilet and like various other things need to be fixed. Nothing major, but like, like little pieces of wood here and there.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the attorney held the $6,000. That's been replaced. So they've been paid.
Good.
Yeah. So now they have the $1,000 for the other incidental things.
Fantastic. And that's something that now your property manager is really facilitating.
Yeah. And he's the kind of person who, like I told them, like, I need these, you know, first is the leaky toilet, fix that.
Right.
And I didn't hear from him. And so I texted him and I was like, did you fix the toilet? He was like, yeah, we already fixed that. Like, oh, okay.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're on top of it.
Gotcha. So one thing that you actually did before you even now closed on the house in Birmingham was that you also then took the tenant management certification course through Lady Landlords. What made you decide to take that course even before you owned property?
I think I wanted, well, I know I wanted as much information as possible. You know, even though there were tenants in place, I wanted to know what the rules, and I didn't realize also there were so many rules and like things for finding tenants. Yeah, so, and it's so interesting to have taken that class and then see what happens in New York City, which disregards like so many of those rules.
Right, we are kind of a little bit of the wild, wild west over here.
Yeah. But I also wanted to make sure I was following all the rules as a landlord.
Right.
That I'm not, no one's gonna, sue me or something for like,
Accuse you of anything, yeah.
accuse me of like, yeah, not being a fair landlord.
And do you feel like that the course was still helpful, even though you now employed a property manager?
Oh, absolutely. Because he said, in any of, if I have upcoming properties without tenants, he can do all the vetting of the, he can take care of finding tenants.
Right.
But I don't know how that works in Alabama. And if that comes up, I'll make sure to go through him, like with him, like, are you going to ask about this? Or how do you handle that? I know what to ask, or like, I'll go back and look at my notes and say like, I'll know what to, what to look for in tenants and what we can ask them. And
Right. Because I mean, really, in a lot of ways, like our role working with the property manager is in some situations to still manage the manager, right? Like it still is like our business at heart. And they are professionals and usually are trained or are licensed in many states. But it is also something that's important to make sure that we're the ones that are really responsible in the end of the day. Right. So we need to also make sure that we're working with somebody that kind of has those same values and ethics and runs their business the same way that we would want, right?
Oh yeah.
So I'm happy to hear that even working with a property manager, the course was able to put you in that more knowledgeable situation to have those conversations and to make sure then that the property manager that you are working with instilled those same values that you find important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more about real estate that in general, whether it's tenant management or buying a home and financing, then you can talk to someone and you just have all this background knowledge. So you're not just blindly trusting someone.
Right. And then just hoping, right?
Mhm.
We are investing in real estate. That clearly means that there's a certain amount of risk that comes along with what we're doing.
Yeah.
But the whole point of any type of investment is to mitigate the risk and increase the reward. So by really saying like, I looked into this, I had that education, you are able to make the best decisions and the most educated decisions that then will lower the risk of what you're doing and make you a more successful real estate investor.
Yeah, for example, the company that did the inspection, I had them do the septic tank replacement. And I don't know if this is an Alabama thing or a them thing. They just kind of wanted to like get the money and go buy the septic tank and go fix it. And
Right.
I was like, that's great, but I need some sort of like in writing estimate.
Right.
Like there's no, like, I mean, I trust you, you were referred from my realtor, but I have to cover both of our bases. Like,
Correct. It sounds like you found a great person to work with, but there was also, we need to slow it down and it really kind of needs to go on your pace. You are the CEO of your business. You are the one that gets to make those decisions with anything in the real estate investing journey. So you are really the one to say what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with. So I'm happy that you kind of found where that line was for you.
Yeah. And I was thinking like any reputable business, if they're going to give you a problem with that, then they're not a company you want to be working with.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Yeah. I mean, same with like the property manager, like, Larry was, went through his whole spiel and then, sent me an agreement and he was like, there's so many things in there because my attorney put them in. I was like, oh, that's good with me.
Yeah.
Protect both of us. That's fine.
Perfect. So now we already have first rental property.
Mm-hmm.
What are we working on now, Patty?
Yeah. So now I would like to buy another property in Birmingham.
Okay.
I'm thinking I want to, instead of getting a conventional mortgage because the down payment is a lot, and I just bought, I mean, like a month ago, bought my is to do like a use hard money to buy a property, and maybe buy one. There are a lot of wholesalers, but
Mhm.
I'm a little bit wary of that. But to buy another property and then fix it up and then get tenants in there, and then
Gotcha.
cash out refinance to pay the loan back.
Right. So really do that burst strategy for the next one,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
love that. Because with the burst strategy, you buy your property, you
Mhm.
rehab it, you rent it out, you refinance it, and then you repeat that strategy. So what's great about that is when you do that rehab, you add value to that property. So it'll praise for higher. So the idea is when you do that cash out refinance, you can, yes, switch out of that hard money loan and lower your interest rate.
Mhm.
But you then, the idea with the concept is to get your down payment money back out and then be able to purchase another property
Yeah.
using that same amount of money. So you're
Mhm.
not constantly saving for 25% over and over
Right, because then it would take a long time.
again. Yes,
to get all that money. Yeah.
exactly. And then
Yeah.
not only that, but by buying, even though with a hard money loan, you're still going to have to look to put down around that 25% as you would with a conventional loan. If then you're finding a property that you are rehabbing, you can get it at a lower price point, right?
Mhm.
So then
Yeah.
same thing, even though it's the same amount down payment wise, pretty much, you'll have the ability to buy a place at a cheaper rate, which also then will help kind of speed up your real estate investing journey to be able to get property number 2.
Yeah. Mhm.
I
Yep, and
love
I
it.
feel like that's a whole nother, like that, so then that, doing the BRRRR strategy is a whole nother like bucket of research, is to like, so I'll, even though I'm not, gonna buy one tomorrow, like I still look at all these listings and try to like learn about the financing, and then
Mhm.
I'll just practice like looking at them and looking at the numbers. And then especially in Birmingham, you have to know what neighborhood it's in and do like Google search on the street and let's see what the street looks like.
Right.
But to practice doing that over and over again,
Good.
has been helpful.
And you were on the hard money special webinar I
Mhm.
did about a month or so ago, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. Because I hope that that was also a really good asset for you,
Oh, yeah.
to start learning about kind of just how that strategy works and to dive into it a little bit deeper.
Yeah, because like I've listened to like podcasts and read about hard money lending, but talking to a person who's in, in reality, in real life, and having a
Right.
connection with someone is so valuable.
Right. And also one of the reasons I did it was because I felt like a lot of the other podcasts that I heard about hard money lending didn't actually walk you through what actually needed to happen or what that would actually look
Uh-huh.
like. And I
Yeah,
was
that's
like, I need, once again, for me, I feel like a lot of the resources that like we have with Lady Landlords really came out of my whole, like, I need an answer to this. If I can't find the answer, I'm sure some other person is in the same boat as me. So I'm really happy that that was able to help you. For any of our listeners that have not listened to the hard money special webinar, I'll make
Mhm.
sure to link it down in the show notes so that our listeners can go back and watch that episode. But great. I love hearing what you're doing next. I love here also that you're kind of branching out into something new. And really the change that I've seen in you, Patty, over the past now year and a half that we've been kind of working together and known each
Mhm.
other. And I've gotten to meet you. You've come to local meetups before here in New York, is that I feel like I can see like every time you do something else, like your confidence just kind of really kind of continues to grow. And for me,
Mhm.
it's so exciting now to hear you say, hey, actually, I'm going to probably do a flip. I'm going to move into something even different than starting with a rental. And I love that you are kind of doing this in a very tiered approach. Let me buy something. I have property manager in place, have a crew kind of in place. Now let me take on the next project where I'm more involved and have more oversight and kind of continue to grow in that. I think that's a really, really smart way to grow a portfolio.
Yeah, thank you. I think also buying your first property and getting to know all the information. I mean, it's very overwhelming. There's so many, and like, I mean, the closing documents, like I read through all of them, but it's a lot.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, even I didn't even know what like putting an offer down was like. Like
Right.
there's so many, I was like texting my realtor, like, what does this mean? Hazard insurance? This is, So I think going through that, like all those things has really helped build my confidence. Like I can do this. Yep. It's going to take time. It's going to take asking questions, don't just be like, okay, great. No, you have to like go through and take the time,
And you put the work in. You incredibly deserve the rewards that you're reaping now because you did. You followed through, you had a plan, you consistently dedicated some of your time to the next steps within real estate. And I think it's just so fantastic to see you with your first property now.
Thanks. Yeah, it's very exciting.
What would you say to a member of ours that's out there listening that's like, man, I want my first property too? What advice would you give to somebody that's still starting out in this industry?
I think two things. One, save as much money as you can.
Okay.
And then two, I think take a class like yours, where you just get as much, even if you feel like it's information overload, just get as much information as you can, but like in a, like sequential, this is what you do, this is how this works. Like, and don't buy into the like pie in the sky type things. But I think taking a class like yours was so helpful.
Thank you.
Also because you didn't feel like I didn't feel alone. Like there's other people who I could talk to who are in my same boat.
Right. And that's one of my favorite parts about it too, is really seeing the relationships that the other members in the beginner's course and the tenant management course, like kind of like build on their own, where then now they almost have like an accountability buddy and they have somebody that's going through those same beginner steps right alongside with them to celebrate all the wins, to commiserate when things go wrong. So I'm really happy that it was a great vision to say, hey, look, there's a room full of people that are out there just like me, wading through these waters, wading through this too much information, wading through the analysis paralysis that so many have problems with. And then we're able to say, great, this is what we need to do to kind of be able to move forward. So I'm happy that you were able to do that and find us as a resource. That's cool.
And I think just to also be able to ask any question, like, I don't understand what this means, or what does that mean? Because I feel like doing real estate meetups is important. And so then you get to get connections where you live. But I found that a lot of people are experienced and they throw around like, what's the LTV? What's this? And when you're new, you're like, I got to remember that. And you're like, I don't know.
Right. And then you're also like, but where do I get the answers to this? Right. And usually when you're at a meetup like that, you don't necessarily want to ask that person or make it look like you don't know. But then meanwhile, you go home and you're like, VTL, LTV, which way was it, to even kind of have it. So I do think that's kind of the beauty of it, is to be able to bring everybody together. Yeah. And everybody's really in the same place. Right. And then it's just a really great place. We're kind of like Planet Fitness. It's a no judgment zone, right? Where people can really just ask the questions that they want and get help moving forward. So Patty, I am so glad that you shared your story with us today. I'm sure that there are other people out there that are saying, you know what, if Patty can do it, I can do it too.
That's right. Yes, you can.
Exactly. And we're going to have you back on the podcast now when you get to your BRRRR. I want to hear all about that next.
Yeah, that'll be a whole different, I'll learn lots more for that.
Exactly. A whole different strategy.
Yeah.
But Patty, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you coming on and inspiring our ladies and sharing your story.
You're welcome. Anytime. Nice to talk with you.
Thank you. For any of our listeners out there, like I said, I will put down in the show notes to learn more about the special webinar we did about hard money lending. And I will also put the link if you are interested in taking the beginner's course that Patty mentioned, or also our tenant management certification course. Thank you very much for joining us today. And please do make sure to subscribe, whether you listen to us on wherever you listen to podcasts, or if you are watching us on YouTube. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to not miss the next episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. We release new episodes every single Tuesday.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're feeling stuck in your real estate journey, visit lady-landlords.com/roadmap to book a one-on-one workshop with me. I'll help you determine your next best strategy. Or you could subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive tips and offers. Invest with confidence. Become a lady landlord today.